get started about learning about Boolean logic and using that to compare things. Boolean logic all comes down to just a 1 or a 0, basically, or true or false. A conditional statement is a statement that's going to evaluate either to true or false. And comparison operators are what we use to create those conditional statements. And those are operators that are going to evaluate to true or false. Now, we use conditional statements all the time in our everyday lives. For example, if you drive over the speed limit, you will get a ticket if you're caught by the cop. If there is toilet paper in the store, then you're going to want to go buy some right now. If you do your homework and study, then you will do well in your class. Those are all conditional statements that if you do certain things, then a certain outcome will happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn about these conditional statements and this Boolean logic to use to do that. And everything's going to be very discrete and very logical to a computer. So let's talk about the Bool type inside of Python. So the Bool type in Python is essentially a true or false, and that's a type. So just like there's an integer and there's a string and there's a dictionaries and lists, true and false have a type. They're Bool. And when we use comparison operators, they're going to return a type of Bool, and that value is either going to be a true or a false. Now we can actually cast or convert other types into a Bool type. So we can convert an integer or a float or even a string into a bool. So here we got an example. We've taken the bool of 10 or the bool of -1, and both of those evaluate to true because those are actual values. Those are values other than 0. Remember, so a true or false is either 1 or 0. So when we do a Boolean of a number, unless it's 0, it will always be true. So in this case, in the third line, we've got a bool of 0. That is going to evaluate to false. Now, in the next one, we're looking at some strings and how we convert types of strings. You'll notice that we've got a bool of false and a bool of true. Now, you might think that the bool of false might actually return false, but it doesn't. It returns true. And the reason why is the only time a string will be a Boolean of false is if the string is empty, meaning there's nothing inside of there. And that even includes spaces. If there's spaces in there, then it's going to return true because there's actually something inside of there. So it's a little bit confusing at first, you might think, but converting a bool of a string, if there's anything in there, doesn't matter what it is, it will be returning true. Let's talk a little bit about our comparison operators. So comparison operators, remember, are the operations that we use to return a true or a false. In these comparison operators, we've got the less than and greater than, or the greater than and less than signs here. And both of those are an example where we have A is greater than B. And then the next one, we've got A is less than B. So this means that if A has a value that is greater than B, then this will return true. But if A has a value that is less than B, and we do this A is greater than B, then this is going to return false. And the same thing goes for all of these types of situations. So we have A is greater than B, A is less than B, is A greater than or equal to B, or is A less than or equal to B, is A equal to B. Now notice that this is the double equal sign, and not just the regular equal sign, but the double equal sign. That's how we do comparisons of equality within Python. And then we have not equal. So is A not equal to B? Let's look at some examples here. So I'm actually going to jump over into Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to create a function called print comparisons. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a value of A or B, A and B, and I'm going to print out each of the comparisons that one has. So for example, I'm going to do A. I'm going to take the value of A and do greater than the value of B and actually evaluate that expression. Like that. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this 6 times. Put a space right here. I'm going to do this for each of the comparators here. So we've got less than, then we've got greater than and equal to, and then we've got less than and equal to, then we've got equal to, and then not equal to. I have to do that for each one of these here. Okay, there we go. So here we have our function. And what this is going to do is it's going to print out the comparisons of those different types of things. So let's first set a to 10 and b equal to 5. Okay, and then I'm going to print out comparisons of a and b. See what that does. So we run it in here, and oh, whoops. Run our file here. Oh, could help if I did that. There we go. Now let's do this. Okay. Now we can see, is 10 greater than 5? Yes, it is. So that's true. Is 10 less than 5? No. So that's going to be false. Is 10 greater than or equal to 5? Yes, that's true. Is 10 less than or equal to 5? No, that's false. Is 10 equal to 5? Nope. Is 10 not equal to 5? Yes, that's what it is. So this is how you can see these different types of comparisons that are going to be there. So let's make some other changes to this. Let's see what happens when we swap them. Let's make A 5 and B 10. Save this and run our file again. And there we go. We see the opposite of what we had there. So this is the opposite of what the previous iteration was. So now let's see about comparing two numbers where they're both the same. So let's change A to be 10. Okay. I'm going to clear out my input, and then now let's execute this. And here we go. Is 10 greater than 10? Well, no, it's not. Is 10 less than 10? No, it's not. So both of those should be false. But is 10 greater than or equal to? Yes, it is. And this is the same thing for less than and equal and equals, but it is not equal. So when you have this last one, not equals means it's going to return false because they are indeed equal. So comparing numbers is actually pretty logical. That's pretty easy to understand what's going on there. But what's happened when we start comparing strings? Can we do that? Will that work in Python? Let's find out. I'm going to change A to be the actual string A, and B to be the actual string of the lowercase b. Now, I want you to think to yourself real quick while I type this out, what do you think is going to be going on? And how will this work? How would you compare two strings? How would you compare two characters? Let's specifically just talk about the characters. How would you compare two characters? So if you were going through this and we were iterating through this, would you say that A is less than B? Well, I'm going to think to myself, and if I know and understand the alphabet where it's A, B, C, D, I would say that A comes before B. And so that would mean to me that if A is before B, then that means it would be less than B. So let's see what happens. Let's see if Python does the same thing. And it looks like it does. Is A greater than B? Well, no, it returns false. Is A less than B? Well, yeah, it is. It returns true. Is A equal to B? Well, definitely not. That's not the case. Is A not equal to B? Well, yeah, that is true. So let's go. So what's going on here? What is actually happening in this situation? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop into an IPython executable or terminal. I'm going to show you what's going on here. And there's a function that's really neat called ord. And what ord does is it actually returns the value of the character in its numerical value. So if you remember, computers, they think in numbers. Everything is a number to them. So it's ones and zeros, right? And ones and zeros, all it will translate down to, it can be translated and expanded out to a number. So if we do the ord of A, it should return the number, the numeric value of that. And this is based on the character mapping. So if we're using Unicode or the ASCII table, it's going to return that value that's in there. So let's see what the ord of A is. Well, it's 97. let's see what the ord of B is. Well, that one's 98. So when we look at it that way, then, well, hey, 97 is less than 98, and this makes sense. So now let's throw a little bit of something else at it. Let's see what happens when we put an actual string in here. So I'm going to do apples for A and apricots for B. And let's see what this does. And what would you think this happens? So if you were to order two strings together or two words, how would you order them? Well, I would order them similar to the way that I would order my alphabet. And if the letter comes before it, then I would say that that's less than, or it comes first. So let's see what this does and see if Python does the same thing. Well, hey, it looks like it does. If you look at this, apples is APP-L. And if you look at apricots, it's APP-R. L comes before R, and so we would expect that apples is less than apricots, and that is true. And that follows the exact same way as if we had done just A or B, the single characters. So what's going on here? How is Python comparing these two strings and doing that? Well, I'm going to show you a little bit of a hint here of what's happening. Let's comment out this guy right here. And I'm going to print out a little comparator here. So A ord, B ord. What I'm going to do is I'm going to print out for each character in the A and B strings So what zip does here is it actually takes this guy and it combines the two together as like a tuple. And it's going to go through and it's going to give me a tuple of tuples where it's going to be AA, then PP, then PP, and then LR, and then EI, and then SC. And then it's going to stop there. And so let's see what happens here. So we're going to print out each character here. So the ordinal value of each character here. And don't mind the less than 6 here for this formatting string. This is just a formatting string that basically says no matter what this value is, make sure it fills up 6 characters worth of spaces. That's all that's doing. It's not actually doing a comparison here. And this is just simply saying, this is right here is saying move, make sure that this is right aligned. And what this guy does is actually saying left aligned right here. And I've actually got this. All right, let's see what this guy does. And let's print this out. Oh, what did I do wrong here? There we go. There we go. Now let's run this. Okay, we can see as we iterate through here. So A has a value of 97, P has a value of 112, and we can see that this matches up. And now we can see here there's a change. So L actually has a value of 108, and R has a value of 114. And that's how Python is actually comparing the strings. Is going through and doing that and making sure that they match up. Now, if we had a situation, let's change this one more time. And let's do a little bit of both here. Let's change this to applesauce. How is Python going to compare this? And how does this work? Well, let's run this and see. Well, you can see that apples is less than applesauce, or is not greater than applesauce, but it is less than that. And how is that the case? Well, the string ends here. And that means that this has a value and this has a value that A has a value and U has a value and C has a value. So anytime a string is longer than another string, the comparison but their first part of the string is exactly the same, the string that is longer will be the greater than value, and that's how that's going to work. So in other words, if a string is a substring of another, or it starts with another string, then the string that is bigger will be the greater than value. So this is an overview of the Boolean logic and using some conditionals and how to use those conditionals. In the next video, we're going to go over some in-class assignments and give those to you.